Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 23rd, 2019 meeting of the Rotterdam Town Board. Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christo?
Present.
Mr. Gitarelli?
Present.
Mrs. Miller-Herrera? Present. Mr. Signor?
Present.
Mr. Tomaso?
Present.
5 present.
Could you all please stand? And would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So this evening, we started the meeting at approximately 5:45. We had added a couple of resolutions via motion 419. With a motion by member member Christou and a second by member Herrera. And we'll read those two resolutions, Resolution 40 and Resolution 4119, all voting unanimously to add them, but they'll be read. We'll read them at the end of the meeting as we vote on those two resolutions. Under Supervisor's report, I just have one thing to mention quickly before we go into the presentation by the Shalmont-Syracuse University Public Affairs class. We had a pretty wicked snowfall here the last few days, and the aftermath with ice and everything else. And I want to thank the Highway Department for their work, and I want to thank our police and fire and EMS folks for everything that they've done the past few days. When it's cold out there, it's hard to work, and they deserve thanks. So I just wanted to say that publicly. Also, regarding the fires and fire hydrants, I happen to have a fire hydrant that's on my property. It's on town property, but it's on my property. I clear it with my snow blower. I clear it with a shovel. If you're in your neighborhood, you don't have a fire hydrant maybe on your property, but you see someone down the street that does, and it's the closest one to your home, please, find a way to get that fire hydrant cleared. And because if God forbid something happens on the street, those minutes to clear that fire hydrant in order to make it operational can mean, obviously a greater loss to property, or God forbid someone's life. So please, find a way to clear it, and hopefully you're friendly with your neighbors, and you can go over there and knock on the door, take your shovel, and clear it off there. You won't hurt the hydrant. When I go by that hydrant, I always worry a little bit, because and when my tire hits it and it moves a little bit, I go, oh boy, okay, so I move back. but no, you're not going to damage it. And obviously, unless you really go full force into something with a much heavier vehicle than a snowblower or a shovel. So please clear it. Please clear the hydrants. And that's all I better say on that one. So at this time, what we'll do as a board is we're going to go down into the audience with everyone else and hear a presentation of Mrs. Ryder's Shalmont-Syracuse University Public Affairs Class 101. They're here to inform us about their findings and the results of their Town of Rotterdam Park study.
I'm Kevin Malone, and I'll be going to Utica Polytech to study computer engineering.
I'm Matt Hordell, and I'll be either going to Elmira College or Wilkes College to study economics or pharmacy.
Mackenzie Tripp, and I'll be going to Roger Williams to study economics.
I'm John Michael Deerstein, and I plan on going to RPI to study physics.
I'm Nick Boyd. I'm planning on going to either RPI, WPI, or Binghamton.
I'm Anthony Ruhan, and I have applied to Notre Dame, RIT, RPI, and I'm planning to study engineering.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2019 Shalmont High School Public Affairs Town Policy Proposal. Tonight you'll hear two policies tasked to us by Supervisor Tomazone that aim to address a societal problem.
The town of Rotterdam currently lacks a large public green space that promotes good health and enhances our community. The current information The Parkland Fund is collected from developers, and it's $600 per housing unit, and we currently have $192,171 in the fund, and the town of Rotterdam currently has 10 smaller pocket parks.
As stated prior, there are currently 10 pocket parks within the town of Rotterdam, with the majority of them being on the west or the eastern side of town, with very few on the west. Evidence. Between 2010 and 2014, the national overweight and obesity rate was 14.5%. However, between 2010 and 2016, the overweight and obesity rate in Schenectady County fluctuated between 35.1 and 34.5%. That is nearly a 2.5 times the national average.
It is widely believed that one way to reduce obesity and promote healthy living among children is through increased physical activity. Evidence suggests that built environments such as sidewalks, parks, trails, and neighborhood safety are associated with increased physical activity. When parks are well advertised and they are easy to access, the more likely people are to visit the parks located near them.
After looking over the number of housing units built in the town of Rotterdam in the past couple of years, I found that between the years 2015 and 2018, there's been a 24% decrease.
Parks create a significant rise in the social connection and communities that they are located in. Furthermore, families like to settle near parks so that there's a space for their children to get outdoors and exercise. This is important because it shows how parks create stronger communal bonds between people, leading to a more loving, more friendly community.
A new park has not been built in the town of Rotterdam in decades, which means the current parks are old. The current parks have been called pocket parks. These parks were built to meet the needs of the population from that time period. Today people are interested in visiting large parks with an open green space. Nearly all of Rotterdam's parks are on the eastern side of town. This leaves the Rotterdam residents located on the west side of Rotterdam without a nearby park to exercise at. According to Mr. Tomazone, there is money available in the Parkland Fund to use for a new park.
Public policy proposal. The Rotterdam Town Board will require Public Works to contract with private companies to construct a 50-plus acre park in the western section of Rotterdam. Please note, costs that are not covered by the Parkland Fund defers to tax dollars.
Benefits. The park will provide the community a place that promotes personal safety and good health. It is proven that people are more likely to settle near parks, and this can bring in more economic benefits like tourism for our local businesses and increase our property values by at least 5%.
Grants are available from organizations to improve and build parks, such as the United States Department of Agriculture Rural Development's Community Faculty Direct Loan and Grant Program. As well, the town of Rotterdam already owns 78 acres of usable land along the Mohawk River. This would eliminate the need to purchase land. This is very important because this would lessen the burden on taxes.
As for the cost of the park, we split each amenity into its own cost depending on which the town chooses to implement. We have hiking trails, which are either gravel or paved, softball and baseball fields, soccer fields, football fields, which would be both turf. And we have basketball courts, tennis courts, volleyball courts, playgrounds, and a swimming pool. And then without all these amenities, the general park would cost $50,000 to $70,000, and each of them also has maintenance costs.
If we were to build a new park, it would increase the number of housing units built in the town of Rotterdam. This is because developers like to build near points of interest, such as parks. This red line represents what the number of housing units predicted to be built in the future if we were not to build a park. It's based off the historical years of average percent decrease, not including 2017, that was an anomaly year. And the green line represents the number of housing units that are projected to be built in Rotterdam if we were to build the park, and it is higher. If we were to build a park, it would not only increase the housing units, but it would lead to more families settling in Rotterdam. It would increase the Parkland Fund due to more housing units being built. Property value will rise, and the overall health of the town will increase.
Feasibility. The town of Rotterdam should implement this policy because our policy will improve the health and economic opportunity of the town. Thank you to Supervisor Thompson for assigning this project and our opportunity to learn. And thank you to everyone, the town board, and the audience for listening to our research and proposal. Please welcome our peers to present an alternate proposal.
Oh, hi, I'm Elizabeth McNeil. I only just finished applying in colleges, so I don't know yet, but I'm planning on studying American Studies.
I'm Michaela Lynch. I'm going to Binghamton University to study biomedical engineering.
Hi, I'm Kaylin DeCoco, and I'm going to American University to study either international relations or political science.
I'm Haley Meshkon. I'm going to Clarkson University, and I'm going to be studying either civil or environmental engineering.
I'm Casey Dollenbeck, and I'm going to Geneseo to study history. Hi, everyone. As an alternative plan to the policy laid out before, we propose that we renovate our parks because that will ameliorate the societal problem. As you all know, Rotterdam has 10 small pocket parks, as we call them, because they're tucked away, nestled within dense housing developments, and they are there to serve their communities. The Parkland Fund, when a subdivider decides to build a housing unit, $600 goes into the Parkland Fund, a fund designed to maintain, improve, and develop these parks. As of December 31st, 2018, there was $192,171 in the Parkland Fund. On this map, you can see the 10 pocket parks as designated by the small blue flags, and despite their size, these parks are vital to our community.
So because parks are such a beneficial aspect of communities, a problem arises in the town because Rotterdam lacks a large public green space that promotes good health and enhances our community. Although we're not proposing to build a new park to solve this issue, we do believe that renovating the parks will decrease the problem because the health and the sense of community within the town will increase. So currently in the town, the 10 pocket parks are not being used for numerous reasons. One reason is the unattractive aesthetic of the parks. This is due to the lack of maintenance in the landscaping and the old and damaged structures and equipment. This leads people not to use the parks. Another reason the parks aren't being used is because Rotterdam residents lack the safe space to exercise and enjoy the outdoors. This is because there are no monitors in these parks to ensure visitors' safety. And there's also a good amount of vandalism that occurs within them. You can see the vandalism in these pictures down below, which are from Fierro Park, off of Fierro Ave. And this vandalism leads people to feel unsafe within the community in the parks, therefore they use them less often, which can lead to negative health effects. Lastly, the structure of the current parks does not promote communal gatherings because they are small pocket parks, therefore they don't allow people the opportunity to hold large events within them.
The evidence of the problem. The Town of Rotterdam's 2020 Vision Plan states that the town wants to promote and enhance Rotterdam's conservation areas. Many residents are not aware of all the parks available to them. In a personal communication with a longtime resident of Rotterdam, who lives in Colonial Manor, she was unaware of the location of Draka Park, which is located within Colonial Manor, so she isn't aware of the park that is located within her own neighborhood. According to Rotterdam Town Supervisor, these areas continue to experience vandalism and poor treatment by its users. We went and visited these parks ourselves and we saw firsthand the cutting of swings, graffiti, and garbage on the ground. In 2018, there's only one town event held in current Rotterdam parks, and this piece of evidence serves to prove that we want to enhance the sense of community because there's nothing drawing people to the parks. Being outside in parks allows children to express creativity without the constraint of being indoors. This is a significant piece of evidence because in today's society, cell phones and television has taken a priority over outdoor activity for children. 26.1% of people in Rotterdam are obese compared to 25.5% of people nationwide. Also, depression and anxiety rates are increasing, but this can be solved because people who live near natural spaces have significantly better mental health. And lastly, older people with Alzheimer's and dementia suffer without a park because the exposure to the sun and fresh air helps them with their illnesses. This is very important for the town of Rotterdam because it has a high population of elderly people. Money collected for the Parkland Fund in order to build and maintain parks is available for use. These funds are shown by the graph here. Minimal signage and poor aesthetics lead to low awareness and usage of parks.
So what's our policy proposal? Our proposal is that the Rotterdam Town Board will direct Public Works to renovate Rotterdam's 10 existing parks under the supervision of the Parks and Recreation Department. These are the parks that are currently existing in our town, and these are the ones that we want to renovate.
So to show the effectiveness of our policy, we made a graphic representation of the amount of money in the Parkland Fund. The black line represents the historical data, or the money that is currently in the Parkland Fund from the previous 4 years. The red line is our baseline line, and that is what we believe will happen if our policy is not adopted by the town. We show that it's increasing because as more apartment complexes and buildings are built in Rotterdam, the money will continue to rise. The blue line is the benchmark line, and that's what we believe will happen once our policy is adopted. Just to restate, the problem the town is facing is that there is no large public green space, but there's also the fact that these parks that Rotterdam currently has are not being renovated. So the fact that the blue line is taking a sharp decrease is actually fixing the problem. And then the line steadies out as it follows the previous historical trends.
As with every policy, there are benefits and costs, and the costs of our policy are that about $100,000 from the Parkland Fund will be used to renovate parks and maintain them. More park usage will result in an increase in supervision and maintenance of the park's equipment. And another cost is that renovations and constructions may temporarily close parks and disrupt local residents of these parks. And the benefits are that a sense of community will increase as people start to use these parks more often. There will be an increased usage of the parks because of the renovation and maintenance. New equipment will be better suited and safer for community use, increasing public safety and personal safety. And another benefit is that the money will not have to come out of the residents' tax dollars and will be used from the Parkland Fund strictly.
So we would like to thank Mr. Tomazone for presenting this problem and project to our class. It gave us a great opportunity to learn about our local government. We'd also like to thank the town board and the audience for listening to our presentation and learning about our research. At this time, we'd like to invite up the other half of our group and ask for any questions.
Question. Did you look at any kind of analysis to at what time of the day this vandalism is happening? I'm assuming it's probably happening at nighttime.
We did not look at any of this.
Only because I remember I grew up in Colonial Manor, and we used to go. There used to be park attendants when we were young that were hired by the town over the summer. And you know what? During the day, those parks would be used for basketball. They would be used for arts and crafts. But then there was another element of older kids that would come out at night, and you'd find bottles of liquor on a basketball court, you would find garbage, then you would find the vandalism. So I wasn't sure if you had addressed how to prevent vandalism, because think about spending $100,000 and the vandalism element doesn't change.
I have a question. The data that you had for the decrease in the housing units between 2015 and 2018, where did you find that data?
Public Works.
Public Works? Okay.
So you thought that was just one family residential, is that what we're looking at as far as decrease of building permits?
That was building units in their, housing units in their entirety, regardless of what they're meant for, that would be all of them built per year.
You're talking about like one-family homes versus townhouse developments?
Or a unit is a unit.
Just
Income
units.
both.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Draper Loss is 172 units, for example.
At 600 apiece.
The other thing I just want to mention, so if you look at both the Parkland Fund's balances from year to year, they've stayed not relatively flat, but we have spent a lot of money in the parks in the last few years, in particular on some of the improvements for different parks. So whether we're talking about fencing, new basketball courts, you see in the pavilions and such. So we have been spending money in those parks, but there is a lot of work that still needs to be done because a lot of the parks are dated. Some of the fencing that's there predates probably some of us being born here. So in other words, it's been there for 50, 60 years, and it does need a freshening up, so that I'm firm agreement with you. And we're also, one of the things that I just want you to know is that we're very fortunate because a lot of the leagues, so the girls softball, or the baseball leagues, and others that participate in the parks or have events in the parks, they do a lot of maintenance themselves. So a lot of painting and some of the other upkeep is actually committed by town residents and people from those leagues, so we're fortunate there. And so I just have a question. So when you each did the presentations as teams, what was the thought process behind having like the two presentations? Was there?
It was definitely, I think it was the Vision 2020 plan that you
Okay.
gave to us. There was the renovation of parks and the maintenance, and there was also the large park that you were thinking of that we were discussing. And so we thought that those are two options that could improve our community.
Okay.
Clever way to divide it, actually.
I had a question. For the group that proposed renovating the pocket parks, you suggested that $100,000 from the parkland fund could be used to renovate the parks. Did you look at how that might be distributed best, whether it's playgrounds or how much per park? How did you come up with the $100,000 figure, I guess is.
We looked at other comparable parks across different towns just to see how much they were kind of spending. So that's where we came up with the $100,000. We didn't really look into what parks need how much money. We kind of left that up to you guys. But we assumed it would kind of be around that $100,000.
So you have data from some of the other municipalities on how they did it?
Yeah, we looked at surrounding towns that also renovated and maintained their parks and saw how much that they spent and on what, including signage, equipment, so many different things, and then that's how we came up with that number.
Would you be able to send us some of that information that you pulled, just so we can have a better idea of what similarly situated towns are doing?
Also, one of their posters, they lit a legend for every single one of our parks. They went to every park, so on one of them you will see what's in every single park if you've never been to all.
Well, I guess my follow-up question to that is, you guys are a group from Chalmont, and really the only pocket parks that you guys live around are the ones, those of you who live in the Junction, obviously. The rest tend to be within the Mohonasen district. Is there something that would attract you guys as the youth of our town to some of the pocket parks that aren't necessarily in your backyard? Do you have ideas for them or thoughts on a personal level? What would you like to see in some of these parks?
Well, I think the fact that we only had one town event that was scheduled is definitely important, because I think if they had like town events to like bring people and like draw people there, that would definitely draw me to go.
Like what kind? Just say.
What kind of
Suggest.
Concerts, like local bands or, yeah.
I feel like Scotia, the whole fireworks community in their park.
We also have the concerts in the park too.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be like a.
But again, you're talking the large park.
Yeah.
So the large park, is it, where do you
It could
spend
even be
it?
like a community picnic or something like that.
And it's definitely important to have good and clear signage for a lot of our parks. I think a lot of our parks that I went to, at least, or that I saw, didn't have really clear signage of what park it was, and I think that's really important. And some studies that we did had shown that there's more usage of parks when signage is clear and present for people.
Not only to identify the park, but to tell people how to get to that park.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Follow this arrow to
Or
get
in
to
the
this
middle of
particular
a
park.
whole cul-de-sac or.
I think it was the first group that actually alluded to the fact that we have a little bit of a marketing issue too, that we don't know how to draw the people to the parks.
Another question. You talked about the hiking trails that were paved. You had a 32,000 per linear, 1,000 feet at 80-foot width. And this was for the having the Rotterdam Town park. How many linear feet, or linear 1,000 would you say, would you like to see that park have? You'd have to go. You'd have to go at least 5 linear, right, to 5280 to get to a mile, so that's 5 times 32, so that's going to get you 160, right?
Well,
I mean, you're looking for 2 miles, you're looking for a whole loop around the
You
proposed
showed a
park.
picture, one of the slides had a picture of that looked like a makeshift park, or was that?
Right, if you want, are you able to put up that rendition of that?
I know that the land we already have, say, you know, in our benefits that we said, it could save money, and I think it was around the junction, we already have this land, it's like 78, and
Right.
it is.
So that property
There
that
is
she's,
a trail.
that
Right, I
they're
know.
referring to is the old mining area.
Yeah.
Across Skank International, Mandy
Right.
Lane and 5S. And a lot of that property is water. It's basically two large ponds that look like one large body of water, really. And so it's a 78-acre site, but a lot of that is water. So it's not all.
So
but
it's not
adjacent.
usable 78 acres then?
But it is adjacent to the bike trail, it is adjacent to the Erie Canal, it is in an area that, you know, we've identified as you all know, with those improvements that are being made to the Empire Trail, and the tunnels underneath the rail line in the junction in Pattersonville really gives us an opportunity to look at something more in a passive use in that area, something that is more relaxing, not necessarily you know, baseball fields and the like, but something where you could have hiking trails and some other amenities there.
Now, is the water in that park, is that usable, like for
The-
kayaks and stuff like that?
So
Big enough?
we would have to bring in the docks and, right, so that would all be part of that plan. Yes, it is. That water really, it does rise and if you will, and decline, if you will, with the muck. I mean, that water is, and that's part of our challenge there also, is protecting that source and protecting that property is vital for us as well. So,
What the question I was trying to drive at
Sure.
is, from your rendition there, have you guys theorized how many linear feet
yeah.
you were looking to have a hiking
$32 a
trail?
foot.
Well, you're not too far from the bike trail that's there right now.
Right, the bike
You're
trail's
right there on the bike trail,
trail's
so
right
you
there.
could hook into the bike trail.
Yeah.
But if you didn't want to go to bike trail, you wanted to actually walk around the outlines of the park,
Yes.
did you guys get an idea of how many?
Feet, in other words, that
Feet, how many
rendition,
feet?
if that was to scale, how many linear feet that is?
I think that's a no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We were
engineers in this group.
Well, I guess you got two, I want that answer 2 weeks from now. I want to know.
No, you guys did a great job.
Yes, great job.
Thanks for taking
I've
the
never
time.
actually, out of all of these that I've attended, I think this is the most amount of questions we've ever had. Yeah, so clearly, you generated an interest, and it's an item that all five of us are passionate about, is, you know, the improvement of the parks, especially those of us who have grown up here and seen some of these declines that you mentioned.
Do you think the name of the park should be the Steve Thomas Hometown
No.
Park?
No, I would much rather use a nice local name.
Like Tronaka Park, right?
Right, exactly.
Would any of you like to see a dog park in any of the parks?
Yes.
Yeah.
See?
Here we go with the dog park. You're right, so I agree.
Pushing a dog
I
park.
agree.
A dog rather, there you go.
We need a
So-
dog park.
so-
It would
so-
increase dog registration.
So to your point, like, as we talked about when I came to your
Set up
class,
a
and you were
registration
all very
office, right,
gracious
dog
to me, and I
park.
appreciate the time
They
you
have to be
gave me there.
registered to use the park.
Is that in order for us to really meet the
License.
needs of even Councilwoman North Carrera here for the dog park, you need a lot of land. And what would be nice is to have a spot where you can have one large parking lot, a nice facility, a larger other with a lot of bathroom facilities and other facilities in there. And this way, we're not duplicating all of these other needs that other, you know, a lot of people in the community want to see in a large park. The pocket parks have served over the years wonderfully in the neighborhoods. I concur with you. We have been doing a lot of improvements over time, but those improvements are costly. You know, and $100,000 seems like a lot of money, but when you start actually looking at what it costs. So, for example, when those swings are vandalized, when all those things happen, you know, we have to order, and we keep ordering and keep ordering and keep stuff in stock, but the vandalism continues, unfortunately. So we get to it as soon as we can. Obviously, this time of year, it was difficult for us to do a lot of work in those parks, but I think over the spring and summer months, you'll start to see even more work done to our parks, and I appreciate your time. You know, this is going to help us, I think, as we move forward to looking at a large park, but also as we look to improve our current parks. And I would just ask any of you, if you're going to be in the area and you want to be involved on a committee, we do have a parks committee. So if anyone has any interest, you can let us know. And thanks very much, and give you another round of applause.
Great job.
Let's give this writer
Great job with your students.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. All right, so let's move into public comment on the floor. Anyone? No one for public comment. Okay. So let's move into the resolutions. Resolution 2419.
Adopt meeting minutes from the January 9th, 2019 town board meeting.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
A second.
Second by Ms. Miller Herrera. Anyone on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you call the vote, please?
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mr. Gitterelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolution 2419 passes. Resolution 2519.
Appoint individuals as members of the Town of Rotterdam 2020 Celebration Committee.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Miller Herrera. Anyone on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, please call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mr. Gitterelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolution 2519 passes. Resolution 2619.
Appoint individuals as members of the Town of Rotterdam Board of Assessment Review.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
A second.
Second by Mr. Gitterelli. Anyone on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mr. Gitterelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolution 2619 passes. Resolution 2719.
Authorize the supervisor to execute a contract with the Chazen Companies, 547 River Street, Troy, New York, 12180 for professional services related to the Hamburg Street Sewer Extension 7 to include a field survey and a preliminary engineering design.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Motion by Ms. Miller Herrera. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Christou. Anyone on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mr. Gitterelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolution 2719 passes. Resolution 2819.
Refer to Planning Commission for report and recommendation thereon a proposed local law of the year 2019 for the following purpose: to allow for a change of zone request from Stewart Shops for properties located at 1174 Floral Avenue and 1180 Floral Avenue, Rotterdam, New York, 12306, respectively known as tax map numbers 58.12-1-11 and 58.12-1-12. The applicant is requesting a change of zone from an R1 single-family residential to B2 general business on a plus or minus 0.301 acres for the construction of a 3,823 square foot convenience store with an associated 4-island gasoline dispensing facility on a combined plus or minus 1.29 acre parcel.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Signor. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Gitterelli. Anyone on the question?
I would just like to,
Yes.
I had an opportunity to review this and I did see some of the information coming forward. I can't remember which it was, but I reviewed this. I have concerns that, there is another Stewart's shop down the street. I'd like to know further what Stewart's shops plan to do with that location. I know for some time they've been attempting to expand that location and have been unable to acquire the properties adjacent to it to do so. I hope that their intention is not to open a new store up the road and shutter that store and leave it vacant in the middle of our prime commercial corridor. We did run into a situation where Cumberland Farms moved down to the Rotary, built a beautiful new shop that, does do quite a bit of business and meets their needs, but they left a shuttered property in the middle of our town, which has turned into a blighted set of corners where nobody has moved in despite what I thought was an assurance that there was a Country Farms going in there, which never actually happened. So unfortunately, Stewart Shops is kind of subject to, the deeds of other similarly situated companies that have come into town and said, we're going to build something new, and we're not going to just leave something dark in the middle of your town. So I'd like to know more from Stewart Shops what their intentions are and whether this is an additional property or whether they intend to maintain the property on Curry Road. I know with their property on Broadway, they built a beautiful new shop, but left 2 properties that they consolidated dark. I'm not against new development in the town. I'm not against Stewart's being able to meet their needs and grow their business in our town. They continue to be, you know, do a great business at multiple ends of town and keep us all in good milk and ice cream. But at the end of the day, I don't think we can afford to have another empty building in the middle of, you know, our commercial corridor, and I'm going to leave it at that. I am going to vote to refer this to the Planning Commission, and I'd like to see what they have to say after further review.
And at that time, the people of Stewart's will have an opportunity to respond to.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And, you know, just for the record, I wholeheartedly concur with you, and I think that a lot of those questions will be asked at the Planning Commission level.
Right.
And they'll make a determination as to whether to refer it on to the town board for a zone change. And from there, we have the opportunity as well to bring in the players for this project.
And if there is someone here from Stewart's, if you go to our website, you can click on any council member's email and respond directly to those questions if you would like as well.
Yeah, or save it for the Planning Commission, to be honest with you, yeah. And let them go from there. Because we do read the Planning Commission minutes, you know, when we're voting on different resolutions having to do with zone changes or other projects in the town, you know, that we do get copies emailed to us, so they're not just on the town website. So zoning board of appeals and the Planning Commission minutes are all available to us. They're emailed directly to us, so we do read them, and they're also included in our binders, just so those of you that are here regarding this particular resolution know that they're in our binder for us to review prior to our votes. So we have a motion by Mr. Signor and a second by Mr. Guidarelli. Is there anyone else on resolution 2819, excuse me? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mr. Guidarelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, so again, this is referring to the Planning Commission. An application has come to the town. We're referring it to them for their comment, and there'll be multiple meetings here regarding this and resolutions regarding this project if it moves forward. Okay, resolution 2919.
Authorize the supervisor to sign a negative declaration dated January 23rd, 2019 for a change of zone as related to resolution number 30.19.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Miller Herrera. Anyone on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, please call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mr. Guidarelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolution 2919 passes. Resolution 3019.
Adopt local law number 1 of the year 2019 for the following purpose: to allow for a change of zone request from Sapone Group Management LLC as designee contact for Edward K. Kaufman for a property located at 2142 Hamburg Street, Rotterdam, New York 12303, and is known as tax map number 59.7-8-10.11. The applicant is requesting a change of zone from a B1 retail business to I1 light industrial for the construction of self-storage units. Public hearing was called for at the town board meeting of December 12, 2018. The public hearing was held at the town board meeting of January 9, 2019.
Okay, may I have a motion, please? I'll move. Motion by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Signor. Anyone in question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mr. Guidarelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolution 3019 passes. Resolution 3119.
Call for bids to be open on Monday, February 25th, 2019 at 10 a.m. at the John F. Curran Government Center, 1100 Sunrise Boulevard, Rotterdam, New York, for removal of processed yard waste.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Motion by Ms. Miller Herrera. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Christou. Anyone on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mr. Guidarelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolution 3119 passes. Resolution 3219.
Call for public hearing to be held on Wednesday, February 13th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at the John F. Curran Government Center, Town Hall, 1100 Sunrise Boulevard, Rotterdam, New York, 12306. upon adoption of a proposed local law of the year 2019 for the following purpose: to repeal the existing code of the Town of Rotterdam, Chapter 31, Ethics and Disclosure, Code of, and replace this code with a new Chapter 31 Ethics Code of. The new code is the Model Code of Ethics as recommended by the New York State Office of Controllers and is available at the following website: https://www.osc.ny.us/localgov/pubs/code-of-ethics.pdf.
Okay,
Repeat that again, Ms. Monaco?
Come on.
May I have a motion, please?
How about sodium hex?
Sodium hexametaphosphate.
Yeah, I like sodium hex.
May I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Christo, is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Guidarelli. Anyone on the question? Okay. Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mr. Guidarelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolution 3219 passes. Resolution 3319.
Call for public hearing to be held on Wednesday, February 13th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at the John F. Curtin Government Center, Town Hall, 1100 Sunrise Boulevard, Rotterdam, New York, 12306, upon adoption of a proposed local law of the year 2019 for the following purpose: to repeal the existing code of the Town of Rotterdam, Chapter 225, Records of Public Access, to replace this code with a new Chapter 225, Records Public Access to. The new code is the model rule for public agencies as recommended by the New York State Department of State and is available at the following website: http://www.dos.ny.gov/model-regs_public access store records h.html.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Christo, is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Mr. Signor. Anyone on the question? Just on the question, we'll have the public hearing. Hopefully by that time, we will have a couple of names actually built right into the law, if you will, the code for who will be our officers and appeals officers, etc. So we have a motion by Mr. Christo, a second by Mr. Signor. Anyone else on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mr. Guidarelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolution 3319 passes. Resolution 3419.
Authorize the supervisor to sign the NYSERDA confirmation of local land use approval planning and zoning form to reflect the Town of Rotterdam intention to assert zoning immunity for its future solar projects located on town and district property.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Motion by Ms. Miller Herrera. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Guidarelli. Anyone on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mr. Guidarelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolution 3419 passes. Now I need a motion for consent items 3519 through 3919, please.
Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion that resolutions 3519, 3619, 3719, 3819, and 3919 be voted on as consent items.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Christo. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Miller Herrera. Anyone on the question? Okay, on the question, prior to our vote for 3519, I would just like to recognize Lloyd Denny, who's here in the back of the room. You can wave, Lloyd. It's okay. So Lloyd's past employment, to be brief here, this comes just from the legislative request, but he has many other, I don't want to call them talents because I've known him for a long time, but he has a lot of experience. He has been recommended to the position of part-time building inspector. His past employment and being a registered New York State code enforcement officer will make him a competent employee in the position and perform the duties of the position. He definitely meets, I think exceeds the minimum qualifications for the position. And I think more importantly, besides the code enforcement, which we need some additional assistance on, is that Mr. Denny, in his experience in the Department of State as a associate architect and bureau chief of design and construction coordination, he's going to be overseeing the rehabilitation of the senior center as soon as CT Mail has all of their, if you will, drawings and information together, we will be proceeding with a lot of, within at least one RFP and a lot of work that will be done, but Lloyd is going to be overseeing that entire project for us. You know, that's going to be a good thing for us because obviously the senior center, with what occurred in August with the flood and these last several months, you know, we got reopened in November, and the areas that are still closed off because of the damage that was sustained remain that way until we get all of our drawings and information that we need for the insurance company and for us to agree on what it is that we want to see happen in that building, and most importantly, it has to be brought up to code. And that's a tall order. So in other words, you know, we could not leave. We could have gone in there potentially, and I'll say it like this, Band-Aided. I said this earlier to a reporter. Band-Aided the building and just cleaned up, put floors in, did some painting, and said, well, we're the town of Rotterdam, and we're just going to do what we want to do kind of attitude, and we're not. We have to bring that building up to code. There's a lot of work to do there. This is our opportunity to do that.
Do it right.
And do it right, coupled with the money that I said this in the past, but I'll repeat myself here, is with the money that Senator Amador was able to procure from us through DASNY with his assistance, and the money that we're receiving through the insurance recoveries, and also whatever funds we have within our budget that we can utilize, we're going to do a lot of work to that building and get it done this year. So, Lloyd, thanks very much, and I want to acknowledge you tonight and thank you for coming aboard. Anyone else want to say anything nice about Lloyd while he's here? Otherwise, you'll have to wait until you see him in person.
Mr. Supervisor, I can confirm that Mr. Denny is a Yankees fan.
Okay. I don't know if that's a good thing all the time. Don't misunderstand me, the Yankees are fine. I'm not a baseball player. Anyway, all right, so we have a motion by Mr. Christo and a second by Ms. Miller-Herrera. Anyone else on resolutions 35 through 39? Okay, Ms. Mark, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mr. Guidarelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller-Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomasson?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolutions 3519 through 3919 passed. Ms. Marco, would you read resolution 4019?
Sure. The Rotterdam Town Board respectfully calls on Governor Andrew Cuomo to restore AIM payments to the 1,300 villages, towns, and cities negatively impacted in his 30-day amendments to the executive budget, and state legislative leaders negotiate to make AIM payments permanent to the state's local governments. The supervisor is hereby directed to send copies of this resolution to Governor Andrew Cuomo, New York State Senator George Amador, New York State Assemblyman Angelo Santa Barbara, and New York State Division of Budget Director Robert Yucha, I think. And that's it.
Okay, do I have a motion? Resolution 4019. A motion by Mr. Signor. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Christo. And on the question, we had added this evening. You know, this just happened over the last few days, but I had a letter that is still, I think I'm still going to send a letter out. I was ready to send a letter out to everyone here in hopes that we can get the legislature to assist us in this, because this amount of money coming out of the budget, we'll have to find. I'll say it like this: there will be projects and things that we wanted to commit to this year that we would not necessarily be able to commit to completely. In other words, we may do some of them and not all of them. This is a large sum of money. It's not a small amount for us, because most of our funds, as you know, are committed to contracts and salaries and benefits and so on. And so the other monies that are in the budget that are there for projects, for engineering services, for moving the town forward, we have reserves, but we'd like to maintain as much of those reserves as possible. So hopefully we'll be able to do both, and hopefully these monies will be reinstated. And frankly, the other piece of this with the CHIPS money, that's the money for highway paving, road paving, and that really hasn't increased much in eons, and it would be great if there was a way for the legislature to provide more funds to us for our roads. But that's another fight for another day. So we have a motion by Mr. Signor and a second by Mr. Christo. Anyone else on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you call the roll?
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mr. Gitterelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomasson?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolution 4019 passes. Resolution 4119.
The Town Board of the Town of Rotterdam hereby rescinds the request for proposal issued pursuant to Resolution Number 23 of 2019.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Okay, motion by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Mr. Signor. Anyone on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mr. Gitterelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Signor?
Yes.
Mr. Thomasson?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, so resolution 4119 passes. Can we have, anyone have committee reports or anything under miscellaneous? Mr. Lanaro is here to speak to us about the sewer project, sewer extension 7. And so we can do that. Joe, you can come up here, or if you want us, we can go back there. If you want to just come up to the dais, is that okay with you? All right, great. Thank you very much for being here.
Good evening.
Good evening. And by the way, everyone, as you leave here, please be careful walking outside because it's really iced up terribly. So please be careful on your way home, walking out of here and then driving home, please.
So I'm just going to present briefly, our office completed a draft map plan report for a proposed sewer extension. We're going to be submitting formal copies, 10 copies, sometime later this week. But we prepared a draft map plan report for a proposed sewer extension, would be proposed sewer extension number 2 of the Hamburg Street Sewer District. It essentially incorporates an extension that would include all the properties along Harmon Road from the roundabout to the town line. As part of the process, what we would propose would be to schedule a public workshop that would allow the property owners that would be included in that extension an opportunity to understand how the concept would be employed, what the benefits would be, and what the cost would be supporting that extension of the sanitary sewer system. I can briefly outline in the map plan report the proposed extension would have a cost of about $2.2 million. It would extend the number of benefit units within the combined district and therefore reduce the actual cost per benefit unit for the existing district and for the benefit of the proposed extension. I should mention that a number of the property owners within that district did participate in an informal survey that we facilitated through the DPW Commissioner, just seeking interest in being involved in a district extension, and there was quite a resounding yes to a sewer district extension, supporting most of the commercial properties and high-density residential properties within that corridor. And I can answer questions if there's more questions.
Where exactly will the extension happen?
Where would it extend?
Yeah.
I do have I didn't bring a presentation tonight, a formal presentation with the maps, but I do have a map that I'll share with the board that will hopefully make it a little bit more clear. But essentially includes all the properties on Carmen Road from the roundabout to the town line, and I believe there's one side street that is that accommodates a couple of properties as well.
Good question.
Is this the same one that you had at the DEC meeting?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I've seen it. Thank you.
So, here's the circle.
There's a
This is
circle.
where it ends now.
Yeah, so Hamburg Street comes to here.
Right. This is Hamburg.
This is
So
Hamburg.
this is Carmen.
This is
They
Carmen.
would tie in the bank, they would tie in the Cumberland Farms, all these apartments, all the way, okay.
Dunkin' Donuts.
And those large
Gotcha.
commercial parcels there.
Very good.
It's just along Carmen, right? Not anything along the other end of Curry River.
No,
It's Memorial Lane, right? I think it's the side street
Is
there.
that
Yeah.
Merrill Lane right there?
Memorial Lane, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that bit there too.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is the roundabout.
Yep.
Mr. Lerner, about how many units are in there now approximately? What was the number? I just don't remember off the top of my head. That would be affected in this district currently.
there would be 329 EDUs in the proposed Carmen Road extension.
All right.
And
Yeah.
we're estimating that the approximate cost per EDU would be about $748 per EDU, which is well below the comptroller's threshold.
And then did you have time yet, or did you not get there, this first computation for what that would mean to the Hamburg Street, paired debt service there for its approximate range for those folks as it exists now?
It would, I believe it were around, it was over $1,000, and it would actually get reduced. Debt service with O&M costs plus the treatment cost would be somewhere around $844 per EDU. So it does actually reduce the number quite a bit.
Yeah.
And as we presented when we proposed the original district formation, as the district sees extensions, those annual costs are going to go down because the larger the customer base, the lower the cost per end user will be realized. But also finished the feasibility study looking at a few additional areas to optimize the system, and that feasibility study will be also furnished to the board in about 2 weeks.
Okay, and the ultimate connection here also is to the Whispering Pines project. So we bring that sewer line is going underneath the thruway up onto Carmen Road. So including those units in when that project, if that project is built, that would also further reduce the cost.
That's correct. Well,
Right.
we did, as part of our feasibility study, which was looking at the
Right, we're just looking at Carmen Road.
of the Hamburg Street
Yep.
district, we looked at not only the Carmen Road extension, a Curry Road East extension, a Curry Road West extension, part of the Hamburg Street north of the Chrysler Ave intersection, and we looked at the implications of the Whispering Pines project if it were to be incorporated as an extension into the district. All of these flows were taken into consideration as part of not only the elements of the feasibility study, but in our recommendations regarding the review of the proposed draft plan report for that extension, and to ensure that the town's interests are best served with the infrastructure investments that were made. We've made some recommendations that the flows would be reduced and use of equalization to help balance that, so all of the capacity envisioned by the town for its extension in along Hamburg Street would be realized.
Okay, all right, great. Anyone else have any questions of Mr. Leonard at this time? Thanks, Joe. Thanks very much for coming. I apologize for you having to come out this late, but thanks very much. Appreciate it very much.
I don't live that far away, so.
All right.
Could have brought some pasta.
Well, most of my goes on.
Recommend that you also all take it easy on the way out. It's
Yeah.
really slippery out there.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Be careful, yeah. Be safe driving home. Okay, anyone else under committee reports or?
Mr. Supervisor, I move for adjournment.
Okay, Mr. Christou is asking for adjournment. Is there a second for adjournment?
Second?
Okay, second by Mr. Signor. Anyone want to stay longer? Okay, all in favor of adjournment, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much for coming this evening. Have a safe trip home.